So Melissa is actually an exited entrepreneur turned transformation catalyst. She has a ton of incredible experience working with people and helping them really become, essentially the best version of themselves, find their strengths, and figure out how to elevate themselves in the workplace, professionally, personally, and relationship-wise. And that's about as much as I'm going to try to explain about the Enneagram before I turn it over to Melissa. So here is Melissa.
Thank you. Can you guys hear? Is the mic working? Okay. Welcome. A quick show of hands, because I always wonder how many people have heard of the Enneagram or know of the Enneagram?
No idea.
Oh, good. So like half the room, maybe a little bit. Okay, good. Well, today I'm here to help you decode your patterns and help you kind of live a better, more healthier life. So why do we study, self-awareness? Why are all of us girls into all this stuff? Like, there's lots of different modalities. We have everything from human design, astrology. We have every psychometric out there, Myers-Briggs, DISC, Colgan, etc. Right? Why? This lady, Tasha, did a study that 95% of people believe they're self-aware, but only 10% actually are. Why do you think that is? Even after doing so much study and work on ourselves. Anybody? Just one person take a guess?
Why we are not self-aware?
Yeah.
Because it's hard.
Because what?
It's hard.
It's hard. It is hard.
Is that subconscious side?
Yes, it's all subconscious, right? So we work 80 to 95% of our system operates on a subconscious level, right? We don't think it's like when we're younger, we create these new neural pathways that create a sense of safety, security, and love. And so we're operating mostly on autopilot. I'm sure all of you guys have driven to work one day and you got there and you're like, oh, I don't remember driving there, right? Because it becomes autopilot. And so is our personalities and how we show up in the world. Until you've done some work, you're not quite. Now we can pick up on how other people are showing up, but it's a little different for ourselves. So we need tools and mechanisms like this to help us understand ourselves better. Neuroscience, which Emily talked about earlier today, but once we become aware, once we sort of tripwire and become awakened to our blind spots, that's when transformation really can happen. So my good coach always told me transformation's in the moment. It's in the moment that you recognize a pattern that no longer serves you. So what is Enneagram? Enneagram is a model for personality. Most of us think we see the world as the same, but truly we don't, and that's actually a good thing. So Enneagram talks about, the reason why I love it and I've gravitated to it is it explains deep psychology, and it talks about how there's 9 types, and all 9 of these types come into life when you're born. You're in your essence, and then our ego sort of gets created, and that's for safety, security, and love. And each one of us has a lived experience from the formative years, from like 0 to like 7 years of age. Our personality is defined. And what Enneagram talks about is there's 9 types of people, and it's given the experience, your lived experience that you went through. Now, we all have different experiences. No one child it comes out unscathed. We all have certain experiences that like kind of create our defense mechanism, our safety. I'll tell you a little story. So I grew up in a home. My parents divorced when I was 2. And so for me, and I'm sure some of us can or have a relatable experience, for me that meant my mom was a night nurse, so she slept all day, worked at night. My dad was not around. For me, how I internalized that, I became an Enneagram 7. And Enneagram 7 was all about sort of living in imagination, a little bit of escapism, chasing fun. Like I took it from that angle. My sister, who is 2 years older, she turned out as an Enneagram 8. And so for her, it was more of a control, right? So I would just gravitate to fun. She would gravitate to control. So it's interesting how you can grow up with the same parents, grow up in the same livelihood. Like, again, Enneagram's a little different. It's not like astrology, human design, anything like that. But our formative years really shape our personality. Now, one thing I also love about the Enneagram that I think is really helpful for people, it's less about it's hard. It's really hard to change our own neural pathways. We've been taught we can create new neural pathways that create new patterns, but it takes a lot of work to do that. So I think one of the beauties about Enneagram is not necessarily about having to change yourself, but it's also a lot in how you understand the people around you. I think that's more the gift than anything. So I want to start right now with this chart, and I always start with the gut instinct. So it's kind of blocked in 3 different sectors. So 8s, 9s, and 1s, those are the gut instinct people. And like I said, going back to my sister, and I'll weave that story throughout. But gut instinct people sort of operate, they're very reactive. They're going to be a little bit more dominant, and they're going to do before they think or feel. People in the heart are more of the heart and thinking triad, and their sort of underlining issue is shame. So they really care about how people think and feel about them. People in the thinking triad, the 7s, 6s, and 5s, their sort of underlining is fear or anxiety. And I'm not sure if you know your number, and it's actually really hard. So a lot of people have taken an Enneagram test. How many of you, show of hands, taken a free Enneagram test or a test of some sort? So Enneagram is actually not a test. They've made tests, there's a bunch of them, that's why there's so many out there. It's really a self-discovery journey, so nobody can tell you who you really are as Enneagram. It's really a journey to find yourself. And sometimes you'll test, and I'll show you another pattern where, like, if you look at the 7 will go into 1, but it also goes in 5. Sometimes, depending on how you're feeling in that given moment or time, you could test as a 1, but really you're a 7, or vice versa. So what I would like to say is, like, anytime you test on Enneagram, take it with a grain of salt, because it really is a journey. It's a self-exploratory, self-discovery journey. But once you get it and once you know it, it becomes so powerful, and it's even more powerful with the people you know. So this is kind of the instinct, like when you immediately meet somebody, like when somebody's under distress of any sort, there's people that are going to think about it, there's people that are going to feel about it, and then there's going to be people that just act about it, right? Which I think is helpful in knowing as we go past. I can't really reach, but do you guys all see the arrows? The one thing I also love about Enneagram is it talks about how we show up in different scenarios with different people in different environments. For instance, that's why I think a lot of people have a hard time with psychometrics, like Myers-Briggs, Colby, Strength Finders, any of those type of tests. A lot of people feel like they sort of put you in a box. What's great about Enneagram is it's sort of taking you out of the box you put yourself in. And it also takes into account that we oscillate and we change and adapt to our given situation, given the environments we're in. So for like Melissa with my best friends is probably different than boss Melissa at work. At work, I'm way more a 1 than a 7. And then with me as a wife versus me, on vacation. So it takes into account we oscillate in and out and we interweave through the different dynamics. But it's also the thing that sort of gets us where we need to be, which is a good thing. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go through each one, and then hopefully at the end we'll have time to pair up and do a little chatting with each other about which one you felt you related most to. Even if there's some of you who think you know your Enneagram type in this room, which is great, and there's some that doesn't know at all. Hopefully after you learn some of these, you'll pick up, maybe I'm more this than that. So hopefully that'll be the case. They're very driven, very dominant. As you can see, I put people up there, faces that you can recognize that kind of give you that element and error of who they are. Their hidden motivation is to be strong and independent and in control of their environment. The thing about 8s is they are going to be very strong-willed, and they're going to be very protective. We're protective of themselves, protective of the people around them. What I like to say about 8s is they're really hard on the outside, but really gooey, ooey, ooey, vulnerable on the inside, which is pretty shocking to people because, like, if you look at some of those people, even Donald Trump, right, you would not think that he's actually very vulnerable, very soft on the inside. So you'll see a lot of 8s that way. And it's very special when you can get through the core and kind of get into the grain of an 8. And I feel like a lot of ladies here that are, if you're dating in Miami, I feel like there's a lot of 8 men in Miami, very closed up, very distant, but they do have a soft side to them, I promise. Their passion is lust, so each Enneagram has a passion and a virtue. Lust, not necessarily in the sexual connotation, but lust in excess. They are, like I said, larger than life people. And their virtue is really to become whole to that innocence and learn to be vulnerable, let their guards down. So it is a very beautiful thing when you meet an 8 that has done some work or has been able to get to that softer side. The thing you'll notice with the blue and the yellow line is this is where we kind of oscillate to throughout our Enneagram pattern. 8s, under stress, they go into 5. So that's when they stop calling you, disappear, ghost you, freak out. Like that's when they like start going avoidant. They go into the integration of the 5. But under their highest and greatest good, they go into the helper. So 8s truly want to be there and support, and they love sticking up for the underdog. So if you need somebody by your side, an 8 is always a good one. Then we have our 9s, and remember, we're in the anger triad right now, right? In the gut triad. So 9s are very peaceful. They're called the peacemakers. And the thing about 9s is, for them, they were all about, as long as everybody else is good, I'm good. So they love harmony, they love peace, they hate confrontation. They have a lot of anger in them. 8s will show it. 9s kind of avoid it. So they avoid it, and it comes out in that kind of stubborn. They can be very stubborn, very passive-aggressive type people. So it's like they'll be good, they'll be good, they'll be good until they're not. And then sometimes you'll see that come out of them. Their core fear is conflict, disconnection, or lack of harmony. So I like to equate, this is not always the case, but think of it as like the 3rd or 4th child born. Like the first child, the mom picks up the pacifier, washes it, then puts it back in the mouth. The second child, the mom picks up the pacifier, wipes it on her clothes, puts it in the mouth. The 3rd child, the mom picks up the pacifier and just sticks it in the mouth, right? So it's like the 3rd child, like they were like, their needs were a little bit neglected at their formative stage, but what they witnessed around is that everybody was good around them. So if everybody else was good, they were good. So they learned to avoid their needs. But their virtue, their passion is sloth, and that's sort of not laziness in the fact that they're lazy human, but lazy to their own needs, their own wants, their own desires. So they really have to work at, feeling into who they really are and what their needs are, because they've spent so much of their life appeasing everybody else. And so their virtue is to take action. Our type 1s, I know very well, I'm married to one. They're the reformists, they're the perfectionists. They're the ones in the room. If anybody's the one in the room, they probably looked at all the gaps, mistakes, what could go better, what could not. For them, their hidden motivation is to be good and righteous and to follow the rules. My husband grew up with 2 school teachers, so he learned from a very formative years to do the right thing, follow rules. So he's the type also, 1s in particular are the type, if you buy something, they're gonna take out the manual and read everything. I'm the type that I buy something and I just start trying to put it together or do, and I don't even touch the manual, right? So that's kind of a difference between a 1 and a 7. but ones go into 7, which is kind of their growth zone. And that's when they can like let down their guard, let down the rules, and they can be a little more spontaneous. Their passion is anger. So ones run around, they're always a little bit underlining frustrated. They're frustrated because they feel like they have to be the ones that have to fix everything, solve everything, and everybody else is running around having a good time, and they have to be the solvers. So they can be somewhat a little bit agitated, a little bit resentful at times, because they're like, why don't people care about this? Why like they're so perfect in their way. It's also like when you're dealing with a 1, you'll hear in Enneagram though, it'll be like, it's called the dishwasher test. So you load the dishwasher, leave, they'll go back behind you and reload it to perfect. And I'm like, the dishwasher's in, the dishes are in there, they're gonna get cleaned. And my husband's like, no, but if you do it this way, then you can get more, and blah, blah, blah. You know, those are the ones. So you know, ones are very perfecting, but when we can get them ingrained into their 7, they become far more joyous. Another thing to know about a 1 that I think is really important is they're very, very critical and judgmental. Not of humans necessarily, but just life in general. But when they're unhealthy or at a more stress, they're very judgmental on themselves. So you have to go a little bit gentle on them, especially if you're a leader of them, a spouse of them, a parent of them, because they go into that 4 and become very self-critical. So they can be kind of hard on themselves. Our 2s are the most loving, nurturing, giving, beautiful souls. Their hidden motivation is to be loved, to be needed, to feel indispensable. So we've moved in now to the emotional triad. So the emotional triad people, they're the ones that like really care so much what people think of them. And at the core is the underlying grain is that shame, right? But for 2s, it's like, how can I be needed? How can I be loved at all points in time? So their core fear is to be unwanted, unloved. And the thing about them is sometimes they will go into overdoing it, like over taking care of people, over trying to be helpful, over being supportive. But they're doing it out of love. And typically, when they do things, it's no strings attached. They're literally doing it from an authentic, beautiful place. But when they've gone too long without having reciprocation, that's when all the strings attached will come. They can become a little bit manipulative in the way that they need to get their needs met. But for the most part, they're very loving, nurturing people. Their passion is pride and their virtue is humility. And they go under 8 in their growth zone, which means they become more, or under their stress, they become a little more aggressive in their needs, like I said. And under their growth, they become the 4, the individualist, which is really focused on how do I get my needs met versus everybody else's. So that's what they're like trying to grow into. As far as the 3s, here's our achievers. I feel like Miami is very much a 3-driven environment as well. But their hidden motivation is to feel valuable and worthy. So for 3s, it's all about being admired. It's all about making stuff happen. Emily's laughing. She's most likely a 3. She's like a poster child 3s if you want to know a 3. I think both of them are, really. So 3s are just, the thing about 3s is they want to win everybody over. So they are the ultimate chameleons. They can walk into any room and be whoever they need to be to get what they need to get, right? Sometimes that can serve them unhealthily because they've put out a mask so much that their passion almost comes deceit because they don't know. They put on masks so much they forget who they at their core really are. They've tried so hard their whole life to be what everybody wants them to be. Oftentimes, threes grow up with parents that really always loved and adored on them on all their greatest, like great grades, great experience. Like we're always doting on their kids. So what that affirmed for them was I felt more safe, secure, and loved when I was doing well, when I was being admired, right? Now everything comes back to being adored.
Only children?
Only children. A lot of only children can be threes because they're the center of the attention, right? Threes, when they go into sixes, that's when they become, but actually this is perfect for Emily being a Brickell Babes, because when they go in actualize, when they're the healthiest, is when they're really focused on the greater good of everybody and wanting everybody to win versus themselves. The difference between a three, so you're gonna see a lot of threes in companies, organizations that are like a lot of salespeople, right? And I don't know, some of you have been around long enough to know the biggest mistake a manager makes is take your best salesperson and put them in a leader, right? Oftentimes that does not work so well. The reason why that doesn't work is because they're still in their three, they're still at their core, they haven't actualized, they haven't grown to their six. But once they grow to their six, that's when they want to win through others. And that's when that's when they're the perfect salesperson. Now we're moving to the Enneagram 4. These are my favorite humans in the whole wide world. They're our poets, our creatives, our artistics. Their hidden motivation was they always felt that something was missing. They had to be unique, they had to be original to feel safe, secure, and loved. Often these children grow up in a family where they didn't relate to anybody around them, which was just unique for them. So what they did and what they do is they often have something external about them that makes them different. They could be the gothic kids. I was working with a company the other day and the 4 got on the Zoom and of course she had green hair. I'm like, that's a classic 4. Like they're always gonna be very artistic, maybe very fashion forward. Typically you can notice a lot of 4s in a room because they just tend to be different because that's how they feel most whole. Their passion is envy, so they're not jealous of people, but they're very envious of people who feel fully connected because they just truly never have. And their virtue is emotional balance, is figuring out like they are good enough, that nothing is missing of them. Under stress, they go into the 2 and they become a little bit clingy and needy and wanting to be there for others. And under growth, they go into the 1, which means they let go of the need to be perfect and they can actualize and like try to perfect the world versus themselves. Now we're moving into the thinking triad. The thinking triad is that kind of fear, anxiety, underlining triad. But the 5s, these are well, look at, you can tell by, they're our true scientists. For them, safety, security, and love showed up with all knowledge. So you don't have to be a scientist to be a 5, but you're definitely going to be the most introverted out of all humans. You're going to be very data-oriented. You're going to struggle with having too much human time. For them, they could go to an event like this all day long and be really taxed out, but then they go home and then their solitude is like reading a book, reading knowledge, reading news. Like that actually, builds them up versus takes their energy. For me, people give me energy, right? Like I love being around people. Something like this, I'm like alive. Going home, reading a book, I'm like, not so much. 5s, all the way. That's what they want to do. The thing, their passion is a little bit scarcity. They have a little bit of a hoarder mindset. So sometimes they'll hoard their knowledge, hoard their things until they feel confident enough to grow into the 8, which is their growth zone, which becomes the leader, the teacher, the healer. So a lot of 5s actually become our biggest evangelists in the world, like Einstein, etc. But there wasn't always a time that Einstein was like on center stage. But when he perfected what he was working on, that's when he became that 8. Now we have our 6s. 6s are also very easy to detect in a group. They want to feel secure and supported. They're incredibly loyal. They're very group-oriented. But they think of everything worst case scenario. So they're the friend that is, okay, where do I show up? What should I wear? What if I come 10 minutes early? What if everybody's wearing pants? What if I wear a dress? Like, what if? Like, their mind, they go worst case scenario backwards always. And part of that is they grew up with inconsistent parenting of one day they would do something and get applauded for it. The next day they do the same thing and get in trouble for it. So it was such inconsistent that they never learned how to really trust anything. So their mind for safety security was, okay, worst case scenario, work backwards. As long as they know the worst case scenario, it's good. I had my 6 on my team was with me the longest, of course, because she's the loyalist. So they're never going to leave you, which is beautiful. But in almost every meeting, I felt so gaslighted by her, especially if I was doing any kind of change, process or procedure. And then after the Enneagram and after we got to know, she realized what she was doing, and I realized, oh, if I just gave her some time. So what I learned is I would meet with her before my meeting, especially if it was like a big rollout or a big change. She would get all her questions, all her what ifs, because they think of like the one scenario that would happen 1 in a million chance, right? And then they would confuse the whole team. But she would do that to me first, get it all out. Then she became my biggest ally in my team. But that went after like 4 years of like, what is going on? So it was very helpful to learn that for us. And it totally changed the game in my company, because not only was she my next in kin, she was like the leader of everybody else. And it solved so many problems knowing that. For 6s, their passion, fear, anxiety. For them, they're totally cool with that. They are fine with it as long as they can work out the certainty in their head. And their virtues have courage. So for them, their growth zone is to go into that 9 and just let down and know if they see everybody else is good, then they can be good. So that's where that certainty comes in. Under stress, they go into 3, but they actually become a performer, which is also, they're just like, oh, forget the details, I'll get it done. So they can work really, really, really well under pressure. Do you guys relate to 6s? Yeah, so 6s are the most populated in the Enneagram. There's the most amount of 6s out there. So it's interesting, and you'll find them. So 7s, we're the ultimate, I'm a 7, we're the ultimate joy bombs. Our hidden motivation is to feel fulfilled and to be free and seeking pleasure. We run away. We hate anything uncomfortable, painful emotions. Going back to my story of childhood, for me, abandonment and neglect is the core wounding of a 7. And so for us, anything that doesn't feel good, we escape from, right? Our core fear is being trapped in pain or being deprived. But our biggest growth is leaning into our 5 and really actualizing. Remember, the 5's the introvert, the like go down, like not be so chasing everything, getting grounded, right? So our passion is gluttony, like we want everything, we want to consume everything, we want to do everything, we want to feel everything. But our virtue is sobriety, is really to stop chasing, to stop going, to stop doing it all, and to lean into sort of become whole with ourselves, that we aren't abandoned, we're not neglected, we are good alone. So that's the entire Enneagram. Does people relate to one more than the other? There are a couple ones that you're like, oh, that could be me. Some people it's very definitive, and some people you need some time to explore. I would say 7s and 3s, 7s, 3s, and 2s type a lot because they all tend to be very nurturing, very loving, very fun. 7s and 2s in particular, right? But when you're looking at Enneagram, you want to look at the motivation behind your behavior. So looking at this, We judge others by their actions, and we judge ourselves by our intentions, right? So I think the lesson learned here with Enneagram is when we understand other people's intentions, like why they're doing the things they do, then we can understand them better. Like we sort of see that in ourselves, but it's hard to see it in others. And then the why, it's all about, why am I doing this? What's the motivation? What's driving the behavior? Once you understand the motivation in driving the behavior, then you can make those changes. That's really where the transformation comes. And I love Maya Angelou's, do the best you can until you know better. Then when you know better, do better. So hopefully you know everything, life. And I feel like right now this room is full of like probably 30 and 40 something year old women. This is a time in your life when you start questioning everything. I feel like our early 20s, 30s, you're just like having fun living life. Then later 30s and 40s show up and you're like, oh, why am I here? What's going on? Why does all this matter? Like things that I never worried about before you start worrying about, right? So I think learning things like this helps give some knowledge to why we are who we are and how we show up. So I think we have a little bit of time. Or how are we doing on time, ladies? Do we have like 5-10 minutes? 5 minutes? Should we just do 5? Okay, I would love for us to kind of get just a mini exercise in this, like get you thinking about yourself. I want you to pair up with a couple people. It doesn't even just be 2, it could be 2 or 4. What is one way you tend to react under stress? Because when you know what you do under stress, that really helps you gauge in your Enneagram number. And then who in your life feels difficult and what might their type be, given the knowledge you learned today. Okay? And then I'm gonna leave this here for my contact as well.
Yeah.
Okay.
I wish you had like one page that you had the different parts.